Hello, this is DC Hammer, and this is the DC Hammer Show. The Washington Free Beacon is reporting that China is building long-range cruise missile launch platforms out of ship containers. In other words, what they should have said was container ships. They are turning freighters into warships, disguising them, and this is really, once again, the Red Chinese, the Red Dragon. I guess they're through stealing our military secrets, so now they don't know how to build military ships. Since Bill and Hillary Clinton and Obama's no longer in office, they can't steal the plans anymore. So they came up with a scheme to get around that. So if you can't build your own military ships, you take commercial ships and turn them into military vessels. So that's exactly what they're doing. They're building long-range cruise missile platforms by taking freighters and retasking them to be weapons of mass destruction. So we will continue to fight them off. I'm sure that President Trump and his military experts will continue to come up with ways to fight back against this. And don't forget that the Chinese and the Russians both have these missile platforms that are built out of containers. So the Russians built these missile launchers inserted in containers and inserted them into the United States through the shipping port down in southern Florida. You can load those onto trains, and they look as innocuous cargo containers, but at a moment's notice, with the press of a button, the top pops off, the launch tubes spring up, the missiles are already inserted, and they're ready to rain hell down upon us. And that concept I'm talking about is referred to as the Club K concept. Following again the leads that the Russians have had, Russia is the one that's been preeminent in this type of strike them at home by using their own railways and other transportation corridors against them. China owns Costco, the shipping company that's based in Long Beach, California, and that terminal is part of a deal that was completed last year. China will create methods to continue to get away around anything we do to try to protect ourselves. But hopefully President Trump and his military people can figure out ways to defeat them at every stage. Once again, Communist China, Red China, is not our friend. Dinosaur Dianne Feinstein, with her former driver of 20 years, who also apparently spent a lot of time in the office doing, I'm sure, interesting tasks in order to keep America safe. And what the Clintons did back in the 90s to sell our technology to the Red Chinese for who knows what they got in return. The threats continue to come to us from the Red Dragon. Do not believe that even with a smiling face, President Xi is anything other than a bloodthirsty tyrant. The Geller Report, this is Pamela Geller's online presence, is reporting that, and I know this is going to shock you, that the Obama administration pressured the Ukraine, and the Ukraine is going to be a word I think that you're going to hear much more of in the near future, as this Trump-Russia nonsense, the hoax, has been put to rest. I think all eyes now avert to Ukraine and nefarious activities going on between people representing Ukraine, people out of the Ukraine, and people in the United States like Hillary Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama. And in this case, the Obama administration pressured the Ukraine not to investigate Obama's best friend, George Soros. So as George Soros continues down his path, as he says, the happiest day in his life, the previous happiest day in his life when he was confiscating the property from Jews in Hungary that were being led off to the death camps, and now his next even better day in his life will be when he brings down the United States, destroys us, and he'll continue to use anything he can until he gets arrested. God let it be so. So, the Obama administration, the most corrupt administration in United States history. We're going to hear a lot more about corruption in Obama over the next probably up to 2 years it'll take to unwind this mess that was the Obama/Hillary Clinton 16-year plan to bring the United States down to its knees. But during the 2016 United States presidential election, Ukrainian prosecutors They just didn't understand why then President Obama, when he appointed an ambassador to the Ukraine, was not pursuing investigations into the activity of this nonprofit known as, you gotta leave it to these leftists, man. Every time it's the exact 180-degree opposite of what the title infers, the Anti-Corruption Action Center. I like this Ukrainian prosecutor, this Yuri Lutsenko. He's the one that's also saying that he was going to bring charges against actors involved in Ukrainian American influence in the election of 2016 to help Hillary Clinton become elected. But now he's also setting his targets on Georgi Soros. So, Ukrainian law enforcement, who knows? Maybe they're going to team up with us and finally bring down this nefarious billionaire, George Soros, who's done nothing but wreak havoc around the globe for decades, trying to bring down countries, interfering in the stock markets and doing other things in order to devalue currency, to topple governments, to then make billions of dollars in the interim by whatever he does with profiting off of the decline of successful democratic governments and inserting communist regimes. The Daily Signal is reporting that Democrats refused to vote for the Green New Deal, I call it the Soylent Green New Deal, that they endorsed. So, how does this all unfold? If you remember, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez unveiled this plan that was hatched in a single weekend by Justice Democrats, the people behind the scenes that you don't hear of or see, people like Zach Exley, her puppet masters. They came up with this idea to once again reduce the United States to a pile of rubble by requiring it to spend $93 trillion in order to destroy the airports, to replace them with, I guess, railroad terminals, to take down every structure in the United States and rebuild it in the name of green engineering. And so she introduced that Soylent Green New Deal, and they were touting it. All of the Democrat nominees for president were fully behind it from the get-go. And Mitch McConnell, bless his heart, at first I believe he was a never-Trumper, but I believe he's become a Trump supporter. And so what leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, did was push into a vote that piece of proposed legislation so that there could be a thumbs up, thumbs down vote on it. And so, lo and behold, what happens? They have a vote, and it's 57-0 against even proceeding to debate. And in that vote, now you gotta just love this, all but a few Democrats voted against proceeding to debate, making the total vote against proceeding to debate 57, as in every single Republican senator, joined by a couple rogue Democrat senators, and the remaining 42 Democrats and one independent, instead of voting thumbs up and thumbs down like honorable legislators do, they used the coward's way out, the way that it was done by Barack Hussein Obama when he was a member of the state legislature, the Senate in Illinois, and he set pretty much, as I understand it, the all-time record for voting present rather than up or down, so he would never be on the record for being in favor or not being in favor of something, because if you have no ethics, all you care about is power, then you don't want to be held accountable for your actual opinions, because you change your opinions based on your best interests. So 42 Democrats and one independent voted present. Not yes, not no, present. In other words, my fanny is occupying space here in the chamber, so therefore there is a quorum and this can move forward. But I'd either have no opinion, or I don't care, or I'm an absolute coward, not even willing to vote to tell the American people that what I made a big splash promoting in the press, this Soylent Green New Deal, is not something that I'm even interested in enough to move it to a floor debate, which would be the precursor from having an outright vote. Once again, it's all a sham. All the Democrats are in the game for is power and money, their ability to steal elections, their ability to be our boss, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now believes, their ability to swing the gavel, like Nancy Pelosi, and their ability then to try to derail legitimate administrations such as Mad Maxine Waters with her Impeach 45 mantra that she has been shouting since the day that President Trump was elected even before he took office. So, as the deep state crumbles, the Democrats are running in all directions. These initiatives that they are proposing are all going to fall apart. And during the interim, I hope that erstwhile Republicans like Mitch McConnell and others will continue to shine the light on their darkness, to show them all to be fake, phony, and out of step with mainstream America. And they are completely married to the climate change narrative, the fake initiative in order to funnel money to the research programs on these college campuses and research institutes that may dry up unless they follow free speech rules. So no matter how you cut it, the walls are caving in on the Democrats just as fast as they're going up on the southern border. So this comes from the Epoch Times, and so once again, you've got Mitch McConnell and Senator Roy Blunt, who's the Republican senator from Missouri. President Trump just signed an executive order that will try to protect Americans from an EMP attack. Once again, one of the fears is that now that President Trump is putting China in the box, now that North Korea is being tamed through the negotiations, now that we're fighting back against Russia by building the missile defense systems, that there is still a considerable threat that can be posed by even a rogue player, like even a George Soros, if he was to get his hands on a missile and was to launch it into our atmosphere, and there would be an electromagnetic pulse emitted from the explosion of that weapon in our atmosphere at a certain level that would take out a lot of the infrastructure in the United States by frying all the circuits of electronical components. So President Trump signed an executive order taking aggressive steps to safeguard us against just such a possibility. And a key part of it is strengthening critical infrastructure to withstand the effects of EMP. So President Trump is spending money in order to create the SDI that President Reagan pushed in the 1980s to protect us against the Russians. The press misnamed that the Star Wars program in order to belittle it and to rally public pressure against the rollout of SDI. But SDI was one of the critical components that forced the Soviet Union to its knees, a spending crisis that they incurred to try to keep up with our technology. And again, SDI back in the 80s was a program to do just what President Trump is rolling out right now, which is the development of interceptor missiles that will protect us. These are defensive missiles that have been created that will take out an enemy incoming missile before it gets over the United States. But President Trump is not putting all his eggs in that one basket. He is now taking steps to make sure that if a single nuclear missile makes its way through our protective layers and does explode in our atmosphere over the middle of the United States in a way that can take out a lot of our infrastructure, that we're going to harden our infrastructure and make it that even if there is some kind of a calamity of that nature, the explosion of a nuclear weapon in the atmosphere, that it will not take out all of the electrical grid and put us back into the 1800s. So the Department of Defense is focusing on ways to deter an EMP attack, but even if an attack does happen, we are also then creating ways to protect ourselves just in case one of those missiles gets through. And we do have the need then to recover from a potentially catastrophic incident that will have been muted by what President Trump is doing to keep us all safe. And according to the Washington Examiner, 86% of all of the arrests that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, other words known as ICE, these people that they've been arresting, illegal criminals in our country, 86% of the arrests that they are making, these people that they're grabbing again, have prior criminal charges. And now, the population of illegal immigrant criminals is now the second largest group in our prison system. And they are second only to the people that are locked up for drugs. And I'm believing that as President Trump continues to build that wall, not only will it shield us from the hordes of illegals that are attempting to jump the border and spread themselves around the country, but it will also shut down the deep state, Democrat-aligned drug importation and gun exportation business that's been going on for decades. And as that illegal drug business dries up, the number of arrests for drug dealing around the nation should curtail. There's only a difference of 180 between the number on drug offenses and the number on immigration crimes. So if you dry up the drug criminals, then the people incarcerated for immigration crimes will exceed it and become the number one group in our system. But if both go down at the same time, in other words, if the wall works and we put these people back on the other side of the wall, we build the wall, we throw these criminals back over the wall, and we keep the people that are in this country from then being involved in drug crime, we're in a trajectory in order to clean up all of these issues, decrease the number of people that are incarcerated, as we decrease the number of crimes that are going on, as we increase our security and take stronger action against incursion across the southern border. The New American is reporting that as of yesterday, Dr. Jerome Corsi has vowed to make Mueller pay for alleging prosecutorial misconduct. And again, I love these words we have to use, alleging. Over the last 2 years, have you heard the Marxist screaming media use the word alleged when it came to President Trump being, a traitor, aligning himself with Putin? I didn't hear the word alleged much. It was a foregone conclusion they espoused that President Trump was acting in concert with a foreign government, and that would make him a traitor, as Press Secretary Sanders pointed out the other day. So as for 2 years they've been inappropriately labeling President Trump as a traitor without any evidence, and now it's obvious that what Mueller and his team of angry Democrats, including Jeannie Rhee, who was one of those agents that interviewed Dr. Corsi direct, and was one of those that was threatening him with prison for having done nothing. Dr. Jerome Corsi is now saying he is not backing down, that an apology is not enough, a finding of innocence is not enough, his vindication and the vindication of President Trump, General Michael Flynn, Carter Page, and George Papadopoulos is not enough. There now needs to be action taken against the people that perpetrated these crimes against the United States. And Dr. Jerome Corsi is saying that they will have to pay for this. Dr. Corsi has already filed a $350 million lawsuit against his persecutors. He will continue down that road using Larry Klayman as his primary legal advocate. And what Larry Klayman is saying, that the moral to the story is a good defense is a good offense. What he's talking about is they believe, and I believe with them, Larry Klayman and Dr. Corsi, that when Dr. Corsi stood up and said, I'm not going to sign on the dotted line to admit to a crime I didn't commit. I did not willfully say anything that was factually incorrect to my persecutors. They are attempting to say that, and they put a plea deal in front of me to get me to sign on the dotted line saying that that's exactly what I did, and I refused to do it. So, right after that, Dr. Corsi filed his $350 million lawsuit and a criminal complaint that is going through the Department of Justice against these same people. And it appears that that may have been the turning point, that you end up after that point with no further indictments being filed. There's reporting going on from True Pundit and others that actually the Mueller probe was winding down before the 2018 midterm elections, but Mueller sat on that revelation of the end of his probe until this point in time in order for it to have a negative impact on the Republicans during the House and Senate campaigns in 2016, and we'll see how that unfolds. But right now, Dr. Corsi is taking aggressive action against his former persecutors in order for some kind of restitution to be made for what took place, the thuggish tactics that were used against him. He wrote about it in a book that he just published, Silent No More. He wrote about it previously, and one of the things that put Dr. Corsi on the radar screen of these deep state actors, killing the deep state. But it looks now like it's clear sailing for Dr. Corsi and his counsel, Larry Klayman, to continue to up the heat on the people that tried to bankrupt him, cost him all of his monthly income. He's now been living without a steady stream of income to the point where they tried to completely bankrupt him, drive him to his knees, and force him then to sign that false plea deal, which Dr. Corsi refused to do. And so now you may have people like Greta Van Susteren and David Gergen saying, we need to just move on now. They may have done some naughty things. The deep state may have done some things they shouldn't have done. But let bygones be bygones. Let's take the higher ground here and we'll just move forward. Well, no, that's not going to work. It's not going to happen because the people that did this absolutely need to be taken into account for everything they did. Otherwise, they'll just keep doing it. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and the others have been getting away for decades with violating the law in dramatic ways and bankrupting people. Do not forget Billy Dale. Who is Billy Dale? There was an office in the White House known as the Travel Office. And back in 1992, when Bill Clinton was elected and moved the Arkansas mob to Washington, D.C., in 1993, as soon as he took office, Hillary Clinton had fired, did things that caused the termination of Billy Dale, who had worked in the travel office for 20 years. He did that job through different administrations, both political parties, and she had the FBI perp walk him, accuse him of misusing government funds, and ended up then firing all of his staff. I believe it was 20 people that worked with him, so that her husband Bill could bring in his Hollywood cronies as payback for how they supported him during that election and give them these jobs within the travel office. Later, it was proven after Billy Dale spent all of his savings to defend himself that the allegations that had been leveled against him were 100% false. So, Greta Van Susteren, Gergen, I say to you, the pattern for this behavior was set over 25 years ago, and just letting them off the hook again now will do nothing but allow them to not only get away with the crimes that they have committed, but set them up for whatever their next crime spree will be. So Dr. Corsi said this needs to stop, and he is going to do whatever he can in order to force these deep state criminals to stand before justice, man's justice, but also in the end we know that they will also stand before God's judgment. So one way or another, unless they repent, admit what they have done, beg for forgiveness, and accept Jesus Christ, they're all doomed anyway. But this is the kind of thing that needs to be done in order to take down the deep state. Dr. Corsi wrote about killing the deep state, and now Dr. Corsi is participating in killing the deep state. God bless you, Dr. Corsi. And God bless you, and thank you for watching. And now the DC Hammer Show is available as an audio podcast. Just go to Podcast Garden or iTunes and search for DC Hammer or News Narrative Analysis Associates, NNAA.